Good evening. My name is Thom Hawkins, and I'm thrilled to be lecturing on art here at the Walters. But this story doesn't start here at the Walters. It starts at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I was walking through the galleries one day, and a picture in the corner caught my eye. And so I stepped in close for a closer look because something seemed wrong with it. Something seemed abnormal. So as I stepped in for a closer look, I noticed that the spear wound on Christ seemed to be on the wrong side. I thought, geez, Erasmus Calvinus, what are you doing? I'm going to school you. You got that on the wrong side. So I went home and looked it up in the Bible to make sure that I was right and he was wrong. And as it turns out, the Bible never says on which side this wound occurred. And in fact, it doesn't even occur at all in the first three Gospels. Only in the Gospel of John do they even mention this wound. And who made the wound? It doesn't say that at all, but if you look at the Apocrypha, the Gospel of Nicodemus, you find out that it was someone named Longinus, who later became a saint after recognizing the divinity of Christ. So this man stabbed Christ and later said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize, and then he became a saint. And there were no depictions of this for quite some time, not until the 3rd century with this graffiti with the head of an ass on Christ saying, Alexamenos, worship your God, making fun of the early Christians. And then here we see the Bosque crucifixion scene, not very detailed, so we don't really know what side the wound was appeared on. And then the Santa Sabina door panel, you can see they weren't really emphasizing the suffering of Christ at this point. Very casual pose. The sarcophagus from the 5th century, notice the muscle tone here. They didn't really show the emaciated Christ that we're used to seeing. But you see here, it's a left side wound on the sarcophagus. And in that Anishkia crucifixion scene, you can see they avoided the matter altogether by just putting it right in the middle. And in the Irish tradition, for quite some time, the tradition was to show the wound on the left side, as you can see on this Miradot cross from the 10th century. And the other figure is offering Christ vinegar, which was actually apparently a good thing at the time. You see, at these two pictures, you can see what we're used to. The wound is on the right side. There's little muscle tone. Christ is very emaciated. It really shows the suffering as it went through in the 15th and 16th centuries. Here you see in the 18th century, these two paintings by John Valentine Height. He really bucked the trend and decided, I'm going to put this wound on the left side. It doesn't say that's where I'm going to put it. And one of those, as you'll see, is Doubting Thomas. And again, the story of Doubting Thomas occurs in both Gospels, but only in the Gospel of John is it putting the finger in the side, as you can see in this extremely creepy painting by Caravaggio. So put your finger in my side. No, it's okay. Go ahead and do it. And this occurs again and again, but you see in this painting by Peter Paul Rubens, you can see that was based on one of the first three Gospels, so they don't actually show the wound at all in that one, and they're simply looking at his hands. For another laterally based biblical event, we turn to the making of Eve out of Adam's rib, which again, they don't say which side the rib was taken from. So here, again, the trend has been to show Eve coming out of the right side of Adam, but again, the Bible never says. So then we turn to the stigmata. But the stigmata never occurred until after there had already been depictions of Christ with the wounds. So were they actually based on faith, or were they based on these paintings that people had seen? And here we see the Italian priest Padre Pio, who got the stigmata, including a wound on his right side after he had a vision of Christ stabbing him with the spear. For a more modern interpretation of the stigmata, we turn to a film from a couple years ago, and here we see Patricia Arquette, who manifested the stigmata, but unfortunately she was saved by Gabriel Byrne before she manifested the last wound, so from this film we will never know which side the wound occurred on. I'm sure we're all looking to it for documentary evidence. So as I began to push my research further, I found that there are all sorts of theories about why it had to be on the right side, why it had to be on the left side, and one of the prevailing theories is that it was blood and water that came out of Christ, so the spear must have pierced the pleural cavity on its way to the heart. But then there's other interpretations that say it wasn't blood and water that came out, it was blood and wine that came out, which means the spear must have gone through his liver on the way to the heart. And as I read on and on, everything became increasingly conspiratorial, and I started to get confused. And what was going on here? And Where are these theories coming from? And how long has this been going on? So as I was going through the research, I finally came back to the original painting, and this time I read the label and discovered that it was a study for an etching, and hence it was reversed. But if I'd read the label in the first place, I never would have learned any of this. Thank you.